Hi, I'm Arjun, and, well, I'm an engineer. I see the world as a system of inputs and outputs, a bunch of logical processes that you can understand and hopefully optimize. But one evening, my own system, my marriage, threw an error, a fault that I couldn't get my head around. And it all started with one simple question.
It was a totally normal Thursday. I was loading the dishwasher, just a routine task in what I thought was a stable system. And then my wife Priya asks me this. From where I was standing, it made zero sense. It was a query with no logical predicate. The system seemed to be running perfectly, but here was this critical alert flashing.
So, I did what any engineer would do. I tried to solve it with data. I presented the evidence. I treated love like it was a proven fact, a theorem we'd already established. But Priya's reaction, well, it made it super clear that my proof was invalid. My logic was just not working here.
And this is really where you could see the core of the problem. It was like we were running on two completely different operating systems. My proof was all about actions, consistent, reliable data points. We're married, I'm here, I provide, the proof is right there. But Priya's point was that feelings aren't static. You don't just prove them once and file them away. She said they needed to be renewed.
Okay, so this whole thing it completely broke my model of how things worked. If my understanding was that flawed, I had to debug it. And to do that, I had to translate the problem into a language I actually understand. So I went back to what I know best, the basic principles of programming.
And this is where I had my first real breakthrough. See, I was treating love like a constant. I declared it when we got married, love equals true. And in my mind, that value was set. It should never change. But Priya, she was experiencing love as a variable, a value that needed to be continuously updated to make sure it hadn't been changed or, just gone null.
And that got me thinking about something else I get: network security. In a secure system, you don't just log in once and you're good forever, right? Your session token expires. You have to re-authenticate every so often. And it's not because the system forgot you, it's to maintain the integrity of the connection.
So that just sparked this huge question in my mind. What if love requires the exact same thing? What if it's not about doubting the connection exists, but about performing these regular checks to prevent emotional security breaches? Those feelings of being taken for granted. Maybe love needed continuous verbal authentication.
And that was the real aha moment. I realized the phrase "I love you" wasn't about transmitting new information. Priya knew I loved her. The real message was in the metadata, the choice to say it right then, in that moment. That active signal, that was everything. The words themselves were just the carrier wave.
Okay, so understanding the theory, that's one thing, but actually doing it, that's a whole other story. To be honest, trying to say "I love you" out of the blue just felt awkward. It was like trying to speak a new programming language where the syntax felt totally foreign. So I did what I always do with a new skill. I made a structured plan.
I broke it down into 4 levels, kind of like a video game. I started at level 1, which felt super mechanical, like just running a required line of code once a day. But it worked. Then I moved to level 2, using natural transition points, like before bed or when I left for work. The goal was to build the muscle memory for this, all the way up to level 4, spontaneous, context-rich declarations.
And then, maybe 3 months into this whole experiment, the practice paid off. Priya was just talking about a really complex problem at her job, and I was just struck by how brilliant she was. And without even thinking about it, I just said it. Without realizing it, I'd hit what I'd called level 4, connecting the feeling to a specific real-time observation. And her reaction, that told me everything. Her eyes got a little watery. She explained that by saying why, by connecting the feeling to something I actually noticed about her right then, it made it so much more powerful. It wasn't just some generic statement, it was specific proof that I was paying attention.
But of course, systems are never that simple, are they? I learned pretty quickly that just upgrading my verbal expression module wasn't enough. I got buried in a huge project at work, and one day, Priya told me my "I love yous" were starting to feel empty again. The words were there, but I wasn't. True emotional proof had to be bigger than that.
And that's when it hit me. Love is like surround sound. One speaker isn't enough. It just sounds flat. You need all the channels working together in sync. I was good at the action-based care, and I was getting better at verbal expression. But without active attention, without real presence, the other channels just lose their impact. They all had to be broadcasting together.
So this brought me to my final kind of upgraded model.
Love is not a static fact stored in memory like a constant. It's a function. It's a process that you have to run continuously through all these different channels to generate output that people can actually see and feel. It doesn't just exist, it has to be done.
So after about 5 years of debugging, this is the code I landed on. It's basically a simple while loop. As long as the core condition, being married, is true, this code needs to be running. It's not one big complex thing, but a series of simple functions that have to run over and over and over. Maintain your presence, listen, show you appreciate them, be flexible, and yeah, say the words.
So here's the thing I really learned. You don't prove love once, like it's some mathematical theorem you solve and then you're done. You prove it continuously. The proof is in all the little bits of evidence you accumulate by showing up, by paying attention, and by choosing that person again and again every day. It's not a proof, it's a practice. And that practice, that's what love actually is.